Okay, the next item on the agenda is the Myakka National Wild and Scenic River Designation Update. We have Jamie Doubek Racine. I'm sorry if I didn't pronounce that correctly.
Pretty close.
Okay, go ahead. So the presentation is an update on this topic brought before the committee about a year ago. At that time, the management committee voted to recommend that the policy committee support the partnership Wild and Scenic Rivers designation of the Myakka River to implement the 1984 Myakka River Study's recommendation to designate at least the miles of river within Myakka River State Park. Of note is that there was a no vote by a few folks and a few folks abstained. I think the decision, I'm told, was that this would come up again, and so it's been a year and they're bringing this back to you to determine whether you would like to take any action or issue a letter of support. Do I have that right, Jennifer?
It would be up to the policy.
It would be up to you what action you would want to take.
If you want to take action.
If you want to take action, thank you. And the connection to the CCMP is multiple water quality improvement, hydrologic restoration, fish, wildlife, and habitat protection actions, including most notably Action 1 to promote best management practices for tidal creeks and rivers. Okay.
So my name is Jamie with the National Park Service. I work for the Atlanta office, but I'm local here in Sarasota. So I serve the state of Florida. I am your neighbor, native Floridian. My past life, I actually worked for the Sarasota Bay National Estuary Program. So it's very, very similar, the Partnership River Program that I'm going to talk about through the National Park Service to the NEP program. Very, very similar. I think the NEP is actually the gold standard, if I could have my wishes. So, but we'll talk about my program with the National Park Service and why we're working on partnership rivers throughout the country. This act in 1968 was primarily introduced because our rivers were in trouble. We were damming our rivers and there was no protective mechanism on the books at the time, and so Congress introduced what is called the National Wild and Scenic River System Act, 1968, to preserve certain rivers with outstandingly remarkable values, natural, cultural, and recreational values, and a free-flowing condition. Those are the two tenets of the program. That a river would have remarkable values to protect, and that they're in a free-flowing condition. It is hereby declared to be the policy of the United States that certain selected rivers in the nation, which with their immediate environments possess these outstandingly remarkable scenic, recreational, geologic, fish and wildlife, historic, cultural, or other similar values, and that they and their immediate environments shall be protected for the benefit and enjoyment of present and future generations. The difference between the two models that are implemented throughout the country are extremely different. One is where you might see out west large publicly held owned lands that are federally managed, those lands that are administered by the National Park Service, these lands, U.S. Forest Service, the Bureau of Land Management, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Those designated rivers are completely different than the partnership model. They are mostly on these federal lands, and they do require a manager on site, and they're much more regulatory in nature because the feds are managing those rivers. Completely different than a newer model that was introduced in the late 80s, trying to get away from that more regulatory approach where the feds did not own the land, but citizenry and communities wanted a vessel or mechanism to protect their rivers. So these are very much locally driven, not managed by the Park Service, but managed by either state, local, or county ownership of the lands. And this is called the partnership model, and that's what I'm going to be talking about today. And this is the model that if the Myakka Wild and Scenic River was to go forward with a designation, this is the model that it would follow. Okay, we've talked about the basics of the partnership, that no federal ownership of lands and management and no NPS rangers. That's important as well. When the National Park Service is working with the local community on a partnership river, we are one of you at the table. Very similar to this approach that the NEP follows. So the National Park Service is there to offer technical assistance, funding, and to bring in more avenues for grant sources, where if the river is designated, you are more, you can apply to additional grant funding sources that you would not be able to if you were not designated. So again, the land use around the Wild and Scenic River is locally controlled, locally driven, locally managed. National Park Service role is limited based on a mutually agreed upon plan. We have what's called a CRMP, a comprehensive river management plan, very similar to your CMP, that drives the actions that the partnership will implement. Very similar to this approach that you see here. There is usually a local committee that is built up of representatives from local, state, county stakeholders that would manage those projects. Again, this river management plan is locally developed prior to the designation. The Myakka already has their river management plan. It does need to be updated. And that would be used already as the baseline for the designation. The federal funding that we have been fortunate enough to receive through the Partnership Coalition, there's about 18 additional partnership rivers in the Northeast. We have one in Florida right now, which is the Wekiva in Central Florida. Worked on that for 20 years with our local state partners. Lake County and Orange, they received about 220 last year, about 200 this year, and that is about the funding that we have been able to get allocated for locally led projects. Next slide. Okay, here's the update for the Myakka Wild and Scenic River designation. About a year ago, the Myakka River Coordinating Council, through the state designated Wild and Scenic River, voted to support the federal partnership Wild and Scenic River designation at its December 2023 meeting. What's the history on this is that the Park Service was involved in the study back in the late 80s to see if the Myakka would be eligible. What's very interesting is at the time that study said, yes, the Myakka is eligible, it is suitable also. But the state at that time, the partnership model was in its infancy and it hadn't really taken hold yet. And so it was suggested that it become a state designated wild and scenic river. So if some of you are thinking, well, why did the National Park Service and the local community and the state and county partners at the time designate it back then as a partnership? It really wasn't around. It wasn't available. So you've got the Myakka that was deemed eligible and suitable to become a wild and scenic river, but the time just wasn't right for that designation. So it became the first state designated wild and scenic river in Florida. Next, through a local advocacy coalition, they approached Congressman Greg Stubbe's office, and late last year in December, the bill was introduced for the Myakka to be a wild and scenic river partnership. Right now, where it stands is I believe that bill will be reintroduced. Because once the year ended and it didn't get enacted, it has to be reintroduced. Next slide. And you probably have more questions. I probably missed items, but if you go ahead and ask.
I had, excuse me, I had a question. I thought the Myakka River was designated a wild and scenic river in the Myakka State Park, but not necessarily outside the park.
Well, it's designated as state wild and scenic.
In the state park itself, or the entire length of it in Sarasota County?
The entire length of it is in the bill to be introduced as a national wild and scenic river. Right now, it is a state wild and scenic river. And as far as the reach, it's all of Sarasota County right now as a state designated wild and scenic river.
Okay.
So there would be no discrepancy, and it would not include Manatee, nor would it include Charlotte.
Just
Really?
to clarify the act, I took this from the act. It would designate the 34 miles of the Myakka River within Sarasota County
Within Sarasota.
It's a federal designation,
for the federal.
but there's a current state designation. I think that's what we're not
We're just,
about.
Correct.
all right. So it doesn't protect any part of the river north or south of Sarasota County?
Not at this time, but history goes, and history shows that if you create a designation of a certain segment or miles of river through this mechanism of partnership, you can go back. In the Northeast, they do it all the time. Start off slow, serves as a pilot, get everybody comfortable with the process, like in the projects that are implemented, and I'll talk about some of the projects that we're implementing in the Wekiva and why it's been a real win. So don't let me forget that thought. We've got one more question over here, but yeah, communities, they're starting to go, I like that, and hey, we've got some problems at our headwaters, etc. But you start off slow, successful prototypes, get everybody comfortable, and then it can enlarge or what have you. Yeah.
Well, I said, we're on the clock where we are in Sarasota County because of development.
Yeah.
And if we don't protect the Myakka, north and south, in Sarasota, we're recognizing it, but it's still a battle with night skies or dark skies and all that good stuff. You know, and I hate to say it, in 5-10 years, there may not be enough of the Myakka to save as far as scenic and wild. They may be wonderfully developed. And I don't think that's a good designation for that particular river. So that's just editorial comment.
Night Skies, by the way, is a National Park Service program as well. We can bring that as a free technical assistance to our local partners. Those are just some of the components because we bring in other resources from the federal government for these type of local projects. In Manatee County, I will tell you that right now, a bill was introduced for the Little Manatee River, which is Hillsborough County. They only focused on Hillsborough County in the study language. Manatee County now is trying to enlarge that to include the section of river in Manatee County. So
Good.
things are dynamic, they
Sure.
change all the time,
Right.
based on ripeness.
Okay, right.
Did you see a question over here, and then we'll go over here, so.
Well, I didn't have a question. When, well, specifically, when is the part where we can advance a motion to have this designated? We have to wait.
I think we're still having some discussion first. Yes, ma'am. Do you have anything that you wanted to?
When that gets done.
Okay. Mr. Doherty, did you have a question?
Yes, I do. Just a comment, I guess. Well, obviously, a lot of work's been done on this portion of it, the federal designation within Sarasota County. I'm just curious, looking back 2.5 years ago to Hurricane Ian and the tremendous flooding. We had lots of runoff coming from DeSoto County, and actually I-75 had to be closed because of the Myakka. And I know the Corps of Engineers at that time was looking into all this. And it's a wonderful river. I love the concept here. I'm just curious whether or not that kind of a designation would inhibit the Corps from going in possibly, if they're studying. The Corps is doing a lot of great work right now. We talked about some modeling earlier. They're looking at all these types of things right now. They're not done yet. They're in process. And what happens if the Corps comes along and says, we have to make some structural modifications? There has to be something done to the Myakka to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the people in Sarasota County, Charlotte County, and of course upstream in the Manatee. So I'm just curious, does this designation inhibit the Corps of Engineers, slow them down, or do anything like that from doing maybe something that has to be done from a policy standpoint?
Well, the
Great
Corps
question.
is working on projects all the time in these protected rivers. So basically, a water resources permit is maybe pulled for a particular project. The only time we get involved whatsoever in anything as far as review, we work with our committee as well on the review, and it's something called a Section 7 review. So if a water resources permit is applied for or pulled for a particular project, we would review that project. And that would make sure that project is, first of all, it has to be within the bed and banks. That's first. Otherwise, there is no Section 7 determination. The bed and the banks for that particular project. So.
Madam Chair, I just at this point, I'm not in a position to, I'm not really against it. I'm just not in a position to support it at this point. I'd really appreciate that question be given to the Corps. What are they doing with all their regional modeling right now, coastal modeling, and what
They
does,
have projects coming down for the Myakka.
I don't know.
And
They're working on all kinds of regional stuff right now.
It's not included in this at all.
I understand, but we're the final discharge into Charlotte Harbor, Myakka. So we're all part of the family, of the regional family, and I just would love to get, before we voted on this.
We do not have any regulatory authority to impede water supply projects, anything like that. So
My point only is that it would be helpful for me to make sure that before we voted on it, that we get the Corps of Engineers to at least weigh in, and so we understand what their process is going to be on any of this, and make sure we're not in conflict. That's all. It's just more informational than anything. It sounds great. It sounds like a lot of work's been done. It looks like, I fundamentally support it, but it's that kind of stuff that I'm really worried about now since Ian hit us, and what happened to us in the region. We had so much flooding in DeSoto County. It was amazing. And so that's all. I'm just trying to pull it all together.
Development has a lot to do with it too. You take away all of our floodplains and you have that non-impervious service. Yeah.
So let's note that question and let's see if we get more. And folks online, if you're going to have questions, please raise your hand. I do believe I had one online first, if I could take that one and then come to you. Carol Ann, you had a question, Feltz?
Yes, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you very much for having me. This is my first meeting. I was recently elected as the county commissioner for Manatee County in District 1, which is probably our fastest growing district in Manatee County, and of course includes our Myakka River, as well as, you know, many of our other tributaries. And as far as what the other gentleman was saying about our flooding issues, all of these things that are going on, I believe that we did clarify that the Myakka River is designated as a wild and scenic protected river, I believe in Sarasota County, but not in Manatee County. Is that correct?
You're talking about a state designation, ma'am?
Right, right.
You have
But-
that information?
I don't think that the Manatee County is included in the state designated wild and scenic. It is only Sarasota County.
Okay, did you hear that, ma'am?
Would you repeat, please?
She does not think that the Minnesota County segment of the Myakka River is included in the state designation at present. Did I get that right?
I'm pretty sure that is correct. Exactly. So what, and again, this is in my district. We do have had a tremendous problem with flooding for a variety of reasons. And one of the things that's happening is, as you may be aware of, is that they are building on the Myakka River as we speak. And actually what they're putting there is a golf course, which we all know has some ramifications as far as what goes into the river, as far as runoffs from the golf course and the chemicals necessary to maintain that. So one of the reasons that I asked to be appointed to this group is to work with you on how we can protect our Myakka River in Manatee County in my district, which is where it runs through, and to get the same provisions that we have in Sarasota County as far as limiting the building on it. Might be a little too late for some things, but we need to make some effort to give some protections to that before any more development starts growing up next to it, because it's going to change the dynamics of things, like you've said, downstream. And it doesn't make any sense to protect half of a river and not the other half of a river, because it's all the same water and it's all the same resource that we have. So I'd like to make sure that you, and I'm also on the, I'm the commissioner liaison for our LMAC committee, our Environmental Lands Management and Acquisition Committee, which I'm hoping to work also in maybe procuring some of those buffers to the river to protect it as well. So please, I'm in and out of the meeting because I'm multitasking with another meeting right now, but this is the subject that I would really like to help you on and have you help me on. So please keep me informed of anything I can do as a county commissioner to give us some protections of the Myakka River in Manatee County and in my district. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Hines, did you have a question or a comment?
Question, just a comment, and it's probably not a popular comment, but I'm going to say it anyway because it's just a perspective. I think that all of this is great, but when you look back in history for all the environmental concerns, because people think they can fix it, and we think we have a need to control everything, and it's the impact of development, period. And so we drain the Everglades and we spend billions of dollars to restore it, and we do this and we spend billions of dollars to redo it. And there's value in protecting the things, and it really comes into land use decisions and those types of matters, and they're hard. They're politically very hard for our elected officials, and the state is growing as fast as it's growing. And it takes a lot of courage to stand up to that piece, but we can't control the banks of a river. We can't control the amount of water that falls, but we can control where it has to go and where we place structures and all of those things. So I don't know, just as a common sense perspective, we do things that create impact, and then we try to fix the impact, and we make a bigger mess with the impact for the very reason that we caused the impact. Just a perspective, that's all.
I want to answer to that. This is a tool in the toolkit. This is not the solution. This is a tool in the toolkit, and it helps us get a little bit to where we need to be. So we hired a full-time education and outreach specialist through this funding in the Wekiva. So she's called the River Ambassador. She's dynamite. So she is always doing education, not regulation, but education. And we do paddle guides. We're involved in a dragonfly mercury sampling project through citizen science on the river, kids, adults, plus gathering data on a harmful mercury that is found through the larvae of dragonflies. That is a National Park Service program that we could bring here locally. There's a lot of cool stuff. She's our eyes and ears on the river. We've had speedboats going in our wild segments that are just tearing up our fragile, encouraging erosion on our banks, et cetera. So she brought that to our attention. Now we're going to get more law enforcement out and help on the CRMP, your management plan, our river management plan. We hire an outside consultant to help us on that. We get funding for that. We've leveraged $150,000 additional dollars for the Wekiva just this past year, and that's me writing grants. So that's where my involvement is. It is not to be a heavy-handed individual or group at the table. We all are just getting in and getting started and trying to make things better. Just one small piece at a time. Back to the Manatee County Commissioner, if you could share with me her contact information, let her know. I will follow up with her.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Thank you. We do need to move on. So is there an action from the committee?
I'd like to
Farrell.
submit a motion that the, well, they just took it off the slide, that the Myakka River will be designated a wild and scenic river. I think we missed the boat last year. I'm embarrassed that we did so. Let's correct it now. And that's my motion.
For clarification, I don't think we can make it a wild and scenic river. I don't think this board has that authority. I think it is to support it. Is that right, Jennifer? I want to make sure I've got
I mean, we
it correct.
typically, in situations like this, we write letters of support to the agency to just indicate that the CHNEP has decided X, Y, Z, and give it to the agency who then considers it and their decision-making authority.
Okay, so really, everyone is, I sense a lot of negative tailwind on this, and it's really only a vote of confidence. Is that what I'm hearing from our committee?
And you can tailor it however you want, like the management committee and their recommendation said only the river miles within the state park. They were supportive of moving forward the process of
Updating the study?
They didn't bring the study because we didn't talk about updating the study, but there was a study, but that, and the designation already exists for the river miles in the state park. So they've said, well, basically, let's match that. Let's have the federal designation for the river miles within the Myakka River State Park. And they saw it as that was also, in coordination and concert with the Myakka River Coordinating Council, which is the governing body for the state designation. So basically, they limited the river miles to just those miles within the state park. To start the process on exploring that, designation, supporting that segment of the river.
Procedurally, this is an act of Congress, right?
Correct.
I mean, it's not, this is not in the Department of Interior, it just makes happen. This has to go through Congress, so it doesn't really matter what we say. We can say something to our congressman, we either support it or we don't, but it's got to pass Congress.
Yeah, Can I make a recommendation? And it's always beneficial, especially all the hats that you all wear, to endorse something like this because you are representing different layers of the community. So if you were to make a motion, you can simply endorse or not endorse the support of the federal designation. It's important because it shows another body that's highly elevated, by the way, all you all who you represent, that you support it. And you're, you know, that's I think what you were getting to, and it is beneficial.
So what is the motion that, I'd like to make an official motion. Please help me with the wording.
So I know someone said that this would have to be reintroduced, but could the board make a motion to support the Myakka Wild and Scenic River Act of 2024? Would that get it? Would that get it? I mean, I don't, we can't put words in your mouth, so that's why I'm.
Just simple.
Just a vote of support, just a vote.
To support the designation, to support the designation. Sir?
I'll make the words. If I still have the floor.
Yes, ma'am, you do.
I move that we support the reintroduction of the Myakka Wild and Scenic River Act of 2024.
I'll second that.
Okay, a discussion before we vote.
Yes, I'd like some clarification if possible as to why the Southwest Florida Water Management District opposed this designation a year ago.
It was, to give context to that, at the time, we had both the Myakka and the Peace River Wild and Scenic as one item, and their concerns were primarily with the Peace River. We have now separated those items to handle those separately. So Jamie has had conversations with the Water Management District. There may be Water Management District people online.
I believe they are online. Mr. Hall has his hand up. Mr. Hall, please go ahead.
Yes, it's the Peace River that we're really concerned about. The 34 miles that is included in Congressman Stubbe's bill is not a concern.
Thank you, sir. Okay,
I will want to talk about peace when we get there next.
Yes, sir. There was another question down here.
I'll just, excuse me, I was just looking for clarification that this would just be for the 34 miles up the river in the park. As your motion.
Sarasota County.
Sarasota County.
The study recommended the entire length of the Myakka in Sarasota County only.
Okay.
We can call them.
We'll have a vote now. I'm sorry, what do you, what's wrong? Just, oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Ward, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment, with the limitations that we're talking about, Sarasota, and I understand, Mark, you're good with this?
Absolutely.
I just wanted to, you're Sarasota County, so I mean, that's, I see with Congressman Stubbe's support and Congressman Buchanan's support with the original act, that speaks volumes to me too. The work has been done. A lot of work's been done to convince them to keep this thing going. So with that motion that we have right now, I can support, but I still would appreciate, that somebody knocks on the Corps' door, during this whole process, just so they can bring closure to my question. That's all. From a hydrology standpoint, what we experienced 2.5 years ago with I-75 being closed, we were landlocked. 17 was shut down, 41 was shut, Kings Highway, 75. There's no way to get in or out of Charlotte County at some point during that event. We can't let that happen again. So that's why I bring it up. That's all.
And I know in Sarasota County also, neighborhoods all over the place. I mean, we were landlocked for 1 week. And that was just on Debbie. And you know what we're investigating? Cleaning up exotics, taking exotic. I mean, there's so many remediation things we can do, but we could spend hours. So
If I can be of assistance, I have colleagues that work directly for the colonel in the Jacksonville district.
Okay.
I can get that information for us. And I will just make that phone call. Perhaps we do that before the letter goes out. Is that?
Well,
We're going to
I
finish
guess
the.
what is your guys' question of the core? If you want to summarize it, I don't work for the Jacksonville district, but I'd be happy to get the question there. Or I can possibly answer if I know.
Okay, so the question was, does designating the Myakka as a wild and scenic river put any stipulations or any, anything on the core where they could not do, projects that would protect life and.
Health, safety, and welfare of the
Flooding.
public, you know.
Yes, health, safety, and welfare.
And the answer is absolutely not.
Okay, because you couldn't answer the question before it was asked, so I want to make sure you're
No,
comfortable.
to my knowledge, it wouldn't change any of the capacities of any of our federal authorities, be it small programs in CAP or GI or any tech services capacities to you. I don't work in regulatory, but I also don't think it would impact anything within the regulatory program.
Find out.
So I do not believe it would impact any of that. If you want me to follow up and get that from like the authoritative source, I'd be happy to, but I don't see any concern with that. And I've worked on rivers that had those designations.
I have a contact at the Corps. I will just go ahead and get that clarified for us. Mr. Hall, your hand is still raised. Do you have a question?
Yes, I'd just like clarification on the motion. Is it the entire Myakka? Is it the 34 miles that is in Congressman Stubbe's introduction of a bill? What is it that we will actually be voting on?
It is to reintroduce the 34 miles that it was in Congressman Stubbe's bill. So it is, if that has to be reintroduced, it is to support that.
Just
Good,
Sarasota.
thank you. We have no opposition.
Okay, I think we're going to go to a vote. So all in favor of the motion that was proposed by Ms. Farrell, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Opposed? No or nay? Okay, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, sir.